Welcome to a very special live edition of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, October 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Purdue game is in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 45 days. I'm Tom Orr inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, joined by Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Kevin, we got a chance to talk to Ryan Day, Jim Knowles. I felt like this was like a little bit of an audience service kind of interview session, because I felt like a lot of the questions that we get asked a lot on our board at BuckeyeHuddle.com, you see people asking you about on Twitter, a lot of those got asked today. And I guess the first thing that we have to start with is the offensive line, the running game. What the heck's the deal with the offensive line, with the running game? And, I think he said, quote, "I think we have the personnel to do it." It's sort of a scheme thing. It's sort of a little bit of a coaching thing. It feels like the answer is there's no one thing that's wrong with the running game right now.
I'm disappointed at first you didn't say that Tony Gerdeman's on assignment.
He is on assignment.
A catch-up assignment.
Yes, I don't know what the assignment is specifically, but wherever it is, he is there.
For the offensive line, it was obvious that was going to be the question everybody had in mind, and there were a couple of bites taken at that apple, and I think it was dancing around a little bit about, are the right five guys out there? Are they in the right positions? I mean, obviously, you have guys who may be a little bit out of positions of what they've really trained for or what have you. You go back through the Maryland game, Ohio State runs for 62 yards. You go back to the Notre Dame game, Ohio State runs for 120-something, but 61 of it comes on a TreVeyon Henderson touchdown. The running game is not there where it needs to be. And with apologies to Purdue, the next opponent, 3 days, I believe, you got Penn State. Doing the math, that would be 10 days, and you're going to need to be able to run the ball against the Nittany Lions. You cannot go in, fight one-handed. So it's going to be very important for Ohio State to find some things. If there were going to be any tweaks, this might be the game for it. It doesn't sound like the next wave of guys are necessarily there yet. There's not that guy that's pushing for 20 or 30 snaps a game who has quote unquote earned it. So are you dancing with the ones that have brought you those five players? Are you rearranging deck chairs on the ship, hoping that it doesn't sink because you do that? That I'm not so sure about, but the offensive line still remains probably the number one concern that I would have if I were just looking at this strictly from a fan standpoint.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of fans who would probably agree with you right now. And, to your point, it felt like in fall camp there was positional battles, and oh boy, is someone maybe making a push? And, is it Vic Cutler at center? Is it Tager Shabola, or is it, Luke Montgomery? I mean, is there someone who's making a push?
Zen
Mahalski. And it sounds like, the top five is not necessarily like everything is all thumbs up everywhere, but also the guys behind them are not really in a spot where they're pushing for that. So, I don't think there's going to be a trade deadline acquisition coming to bolster the offensive line. So you may be in the dance with the ones that brung you kind of situation. But they know it's important for them to get that running game resolved, because yes, you can throw, and you can throw and that, solve some of your issues short term. But I thought it was very interesting the way Ryan Day phrased it. He was talking about the fact that, we can do that, but we've seen in the past, that's essentially that stops working for you at some point. And, the Penn State may be the point where that could become true.
Well, to go to a question that Doug Maurice asked about, just why don't you're a great throwing team. You have a proclivity to throw it more. Why don't you throw it more? I think 2018 against Purdue was an example of that, when they threw it 73 times, threw for almost 500 yards, and still only put 20 points up on the board. You have to be two-handed. You have to have both arms available when you go into this type of game. You don't want Ohio State to try and become what it isn't. You don't want a cheetah to try and become a zebra. I mean, you have to stay within who it is you are, but something has got to change there. I will say something for all of Ohio State's issues of running the ball against Maryland. I did finally see a couple of runs go to the field side and not the boundary side. And for those of you who do follow me on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called, that was something nice to see. But the final carnage of the yardage was not great. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Purdue game, because Purdue may not be a lot of things, but Purdue does get after the quarterback a lot with its 3-4 front, and what will come out of that. So, I'm not necessarily expecting Ohio State to be putting up 200 yards, especially sack adjusted in this one.
Yeah, Ryan Walters, new Purdue head coach. His background is on the defensive side of the ball. He was the DC for Brett Bielema at Illinois last year. So you got to figure, they are injury racked, and we can get into that maybe a little later on. But they are going to have a creative and aggressive defense. So we'll see how that all shakes out. One other element in terms of not being able to solely rely on the run game or on the pass game is Big Ten weather is coming, and it feels like fall in Columbus now. But it's a sunny, nice day. It's 50 degrees, but it's sunny and nice outside. That is not necessarily going to be true for the rest of the season. A couple of years ago, it snowed up in Ann Arbor. It snowed during the Ohio State-Indiana game last year. You can't solely be pass reliant, because you're not playing in a dome. You're not playing in Florida. You're playing in Ohio or Wisconsin in a few weeks, or New Jersey, and these are all places where the weather gets bad right around this time of year. So that's another factor there. 2 injury updates, rather significant injury updates. Good news on TreVeyon Henderson. Question mark on Emeka Egbuka, but not, definitely not a worst case scenario on Emeka Egbuka.
Right, Emeka Egbuka will know more as the week goes on. Reading between those lines, doesn't sound like he's going to play, in my opinion, but with the quick caveat of this shouldn't be a long-term thing. Now, this shouldn't be a long-term thing sometimes means, he'll be questionable on the availability report. He'll miss a game. He'll miss 3 games. But I think that you do have the luxury going against Purdue of not necessarily having to trot Emeka out there. I mean, maybe you have a break glass in case of emergency plan, but with guys like Xavier Johnson, Cardell Tate, Brandon Ennis, because we're talking about playing from the inside. So, this is not necessarily a Jaden Ballard type of situation. There are alternatives there. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka is one of the best receivers in the nation. You really don't want to go without him if you can avoid it. You're not necessarily saying, well, we won't lose a step without him out there. But I think that Ohio State has to really play the long game and remember that Penn State is waiting on the other end.
Yeah, this is a game where what's the line this weekend?
It was 19.5 as of yesterday, with Ohio State being a road favorite. So that's 22.5, 23.5 on a neutral field.
Yeah. So, this is a game Ohio State should be able to win without, having to rush, to push all their chips in on this one. And, Purdue is very, very banged up. That's going to be a significant factor this weekend as well. But yeah, I'm with you. My expectation would be he probably travels. He might be listed as a game time decision or questionable on the injury report. If they do, if he's not 100% or very close to it, this is not necessarily a game where you need to risk it. And if you get into the third quarter and he's really, 85% and the game's close enough that you have to break glass in case of emergency, there you go. But yeah, I think with Penn State on deck, and I think that's something that is probably the way that's going to end up shaking out. Another player who there have been questions about, and it's not an injury situation, is Dallan Hayden. He had obviously the very big game against Maryland on the ground last year, has yet to appear in a game this season. Ryan Day was asked about what's the deal with Dallan Hayden.
And it's been pretty much in line with everything that we've said on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Be sure to sign up, get your best Ohio State coverage out there, great community, everything. And it, of course, helps us out as well, too. So sign up to Buckeye Huddle. But it really appears that he is a redshirt candidate. Ryan Day said as much. And you get 4 games. But why would you sit there and bring him in a game and give him 3 carries just for the sake of doing that? We saw last year what happens as the season goes on. It's a very physical position. TreVeyon Henderson's already missed a game due to injury. He was in the break glass in case of emergency category, in my opinion, last week. hold on to Dallan Hayden, have him available in November, have him available for hopefully a long postseason based on the schedule, and don't waste him here in early games. Yes, you want to have him build up a lather. You want to have him have some confidence going in. But with that being said, you're not given that luxury. He can only play 4 games before this year counts. So he's practicing. He could be placed in at any given time. It's not a case of that he's not looking well in practice or anything. This is just a scholarship management decision.
Well, and it's also probably the right thing for the player, too. You know, if Ohio State's just making a decision in what's best for Ohio State, you throw them out there and you don't worry about it, because how many fifth-year running backs has Ohio State had over the years? Not very many who were real significant contributors in that 5th year. So this is more looking out for the player and what might be best for him long-term. Ryan said you don't want to play him 5-6 games where you burn the redshirt year, but, you know, it's 3 carries against Youngstown State, and it's 2 carries against Notre Dame or whatever.
Or Western Kentucky.
Western Kentucky. Yeah, I was trying to remember who else they played this year, and I was like, I think it was a MAC team. I'm like, no, it was not a MAC team. All right, so one other thing that was a question coming out of the game, and we sort of got an answer on this after the game, but got a little more detail today. The fake punt that was not a fake punt. Joey Coffin of the Columbus Dispatch started asking about the fake punt and like corrected himself. And Ryan Day just kind of like smiled and mouthed it wasn't a fake punt. So it wasn't a fake punt. So what the heck happened?
It's not a Tuma.
What the heck happened there?
Yeah. You know, there were people who were saying in the midst of it, oh, the snap scuffed the turf, but it just seems like it was a slip. And it went, instead of to the punter, it went to Cody Simon, and he at least had the awareness to try and go forward with it. Ultimately, it put Ohio State in a bad start. Maryland made a great pass and catch with Talia Tagovailoa and the receiver Prather to get the 7-0 lead at that point, but they just have to do better on special teams. And we didn't see those mistakes obviously continue, at least in terms of the long snapping, but it just shows you how small of a margin for error you have, especially when you're playing in conference.
Right. Yeah. And Maryland is going to be one of the 4 to 5 best teams they play this season. So, you know, to get off to a start like that, where they get the ball, McCord misses on just a bubble on first down. Ryan Day said he knows he's got to hit that throw. That's an extension of the run game, the way they use those little screens to the wide receivers. So you come out slow, you miss that. Now you're behind the chains, and then run on second down, then third down, they miss another one, and then you try and punt, and you have that happen, and then Maryland hits a big play, and bing, bang, boom. They were down 7-0, like a minute and a half in after receiving the opening kickoff. That's kind of some worst case scenario stuff for them. Handled it, came back, and you know, part of that is this team has done a pretty good job of not panicking. They've been in some bad spots. They were in a bad spot at a point in South Bend. They were in a little bit of a bad spot against Maryland, and they haven't panicked. And it sounds like some of that is just leadership. It's veteran players. It's veteran leadership. That's one of those things that, you know, Michigan has just sort of rolled over everyone so far this year. Ohio State has kind of survived some tests. And, you know, I'm sure it would be great if you could just win every game by 30 points. But at some point, you are going to play tougher competition. And the challenges they've sort of weathered so far this season might end up paying dividends down the road.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. As you've noticed, I'm in front of the camera, not behind it, so I'm not exactly producing. So if I see a super chat, I'll dive for it. But Ohio State, I believe, has scored 21 first quarter points this season. I think in the upper 60s in the second, and then I do know it's 41 and 41 in the third and the fourth quarters. So the starts have been a little bit slow. You can look at this a couple of different ways. And this was a conversation we were having during the press conference I was having with a couple of people in the chat. Is it a case of Ohio State having bad first halves? Well, their highest scoring quarter is the second quarter, but Ohio State probably has not had the best starts in games. Is that a case of, we have the leadership to be able to correct that? Is that, hey, maybe we need to come out I don't know. I don't want to say a little more focused because that's saying, oh, they're coming out undisciplined. But do they have to have a little bit of a better start? Because we've not seen this team come out and really look good on drive 1 and drive 2 and be able to build there. I think when that happens, the snowball round rolls downhill and gets bigger and bigger. And before you know it, Snoopy and Charlie Brown are caught up in it. Leadership is important. We maybe don't necessarily know that they have that super vocal leader. I mean, obviously, Cade Stover is a captain on the team. He is a leader. He certainly doesn't like talking to us, but it seems like he's pretty vocal out there amongst his teammates. Your quarterback is kind of reserved a little bit, but CJ never really struck any. I think a lot of people are like, well, I mean, hold a mirror under his nose, see if he's breathing. I don't know if I necessarily have all those answers.
Yeah, and I think you have also seen glimpses of Kyle McCord. They put out a video a few weeks ago, Ohio State did, of inside the locker room and Kyle McCord getting after it a little bit. So, it's in there, and sometimes you're getting pushed a little bit, you're getting stretched a little bit, you're getting out of your comfort zone, and that's just sort of part of growing and maturing and taking on a bigger role and a different role within the team. Someone else who has done a lot of growing and maturing over the last 6 years is Josh Proctor. He has had a long and winding journey at Ohio State. He played under Urban Meyer. That has been a minute, but here he is, and I thought he's played a very, very solid adjuster. He made the big play, the pick 6 against Maryland. I thought it was very interesting. Ryan Day, talked about the fact that he's now the best version, and then he said something along the lines of he's really changed who he is, changed his role, really mature. He's doing a great job so far.
Right. He came out of Oklahoma, 4-star kid, didn't necessarily get as many mentions, then just hard luck, broken leg, just been a rough go. But I mean, he looks completely like a different player. I know when a lot of people were trying to prognosticate what the depth chart was going to look like, I think there were mixed opinions on whether or not Proctor was going to be able to be a contributor. And he was honored this week, obviously, by the Big Ten as Defensive Player of the Week. I mean, he's been playing well. And I mean, if this is the best version of Josh Proctor and something that they're able to maintain, it's going to do more to solidify that this defense has really changed. It is not the same defense that we've seen the last couple of years. I mean, I think last year we saw some transitions, but the blitzing, I don't want to get ahead in case we're going to talk a little bit about what Jim Knowles had to say, but I think Josh Proctor is probably, we don't necessarily have a comeback player of the year award, but I would put Josh Proctor up for that.
Well, he's someone who, it felt like his first year, I remember Greg Schiano talking about him being a red line to red line kind of player at the safety position. And the red line is, you might actually almost be able to see it on the field behind us. It's, between the numbers and the sidelines on the practice field. And Proctor, just how much ground Proctor could cover and how Proctor was making plays in practice. That was 2018. Greg Schiano left after the 2018 season, and he was talking about that stuff with Proctor. So, the sort of assumption at that point was, oh boy, this is going to be an immediate impact guy. Maybe this is right after Jordan Fuller leaves, and it just, like you said, he's had some bad luck. He's gotten hurt, and so now to see that now finally is huge.
I'm gonna let you read this because your eyesight's better than mine.
Yeah, super chat from Ryan Dawes. Who do you two believe is the best run blocking option in the slot with Emeka most likely sitting this week, keeping in mind OSU will want to run Purdue over and get out of Ross-Ade Stadium?
I mean,
does it involve more 12 personnel?
Right. I mean, but I think if we're just talking person for person,
yeah.
I mean, it's not like Emeka goes out there and lays the crushing blocks that Julian does. They're different body types, so it's unfair to sit there and say, oh, Carnell or Brandon needs to be able to do this. I mean, I think in terms of experience, getting somebody out there like X is going to be able to get it done. And I think he would be probably the first option you would see. I think you would see some rotation going on, though, depending on the situations. But, it's very different of just saying person for versus person instead of running more 12 and having G. Scott out there or somebody like that.
Yeah. And, Ryan Day talked about the fact they have been happy with G. Scott and G. Scott's continued development and, feels like he's earning a bigger role in this team. You mentioned Xavier Johnson. He got called for a penalty on the game, and it was, it was close. It was a play where he was coming in motion and then may have started slightly too soon towards the line of scrimmage and got an illegal motion penalty that wiped out a touchdown to Marvin Harrison. And Marvin Harrison said, don't worry, I'm going to get another one in 5 seconds, and then he did. So Day was asked, so you agreed with that call? And he said, quote, that was what was called. So I'm going to take that as a yes, strong agree with that call. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned Jim Knowles and the linebacker and the blitzing. And, Jim Knowles, you looked at Jim Knowles' defense last year, and it was very aggressive. They were going cover zero and bringing heat all, on a semi-regular basis. This year, it's been a little bit different, and that was something he got asked about in a couple different ways.
The threat of the blitz is still there. The number of blitzes are down, and I think it's good. There is the threat of the blitz. I think that there is Ohio State going out there and trying to confuse the quarterbacks with what it is that they're going to run. Linebackers showing blitz pressure and being able to drop back. I think all of that is important, but we have seen I don't know if I want to say an evolution, because every situation for every year is going to be different, and you can't necessarily compare them apples for apples. But we have seen much more of a controlled amount of chaos out of the defense. We certainly are not seeing those huge plays. We've not seen those over 40-yard plays for certain, a very finite amount of 20-yarders. And I think that it's a major step in the right direction. And Jim Knowles really recognizing what it is he has talent-wise, what the situation calls for, and just more familiarity with kind of just how the games are going to stack up.
And one thing that's interesting to me about this year's Ohio State defense is you kind of just watch it. You go, they look like they're much better. And then you look at the top line stats, points per play or points per game and yards per game and that kind of stuff. And those are much better. And you dive in a little more and it's the per play stats, and those are much better. And then you look at the opponent adjusted per play stats, and those are better. And it's like, okay, there's really nothing that says this defense isn't substantially better. There's no reason to right now other than just general concern that, well, maybe something is going to start going wrong. There's not really at the moment anything that points to this being a mirage. So that's I think be encouraging for Ohio State fans. Knowles was asked about the linebackers. He said they're playing well. They could always do better. They understand the defense. They're managing things well. He was also asked about CJ Hicks. This is one of these audience service questions, because we get asked about CJ Hicks all the time. On why is he not playing as much? Why is he not playing more on defense? This is one of these things. Yes, we see your comments in the YouTube comments. We get it.
We do.
And he got asked about it today. So okay, answer the question, Kevin. Stop avoiding the question, Kevin. Why is CJ Hicks not playing more?
Go live, you cowards. Oh wait, we are. Because he has a couple veterans who are playing ahead of him at this point. CJ Hicks, again, kind of like Dallan Hayden, he's ready to go. I mean, he and Cody Simon, and Cody's seeing more playing time at this point, just situationally, are getting this. You got true veterans ahead of him, so it's not a case of we don't think highly of CJ Hicks, that he's not ready to get out there on the field and participate. It's just kind of the logjam that happens at times. I mean, and that's where it is, and it's nothing else. It's not some sort of concerted effort to sandbag on him or anything else. It's just what is ahead of him at this point. And truthfully speaking, Ohio State hasn't necessarily had a lot of games to where it can just sit there and say, we're going to be much more liberal with our substitution patterns. Those games have just not happened, as the offense is still trying to find itself.
And, Tommy Eichenberg was an All-American last year. You're not necessarily looking for excuses to get him off the field, and they've been healthy. That is a good thing, that the linebackers have been healthy. I feel like you've seen more Cody Simon. Cody Simon is the third linebacker. So when you only play two linebackers, your fourth linebacker is just not going to play that much. They're not playing. I mean, 2019, end of that season, they were playing like a 4-4 at times. Well, if they were playing a 4-4, CJ Hicks is probably playing a punch. They're playing like a 4.25 right now. So
if they're playing a 4-4, I'm out of here.
Well,
I did not like that at all.
and in a lot of ways, Sonny Styles is, he's a nickel / Sam, so he's kind of the third linebacker. So it's like a 4.5, 4.5, really. So in that case, CJ Hicks is the fifth linebacker in a 2.5 linebacker kind of rotation. So that's just it's just sometimes you got to wait your turn, I think. Someone, again, we talked about Josh Proctor and him having to wait his turn. That play where he had that pick six, they used a sim pressure, so they showed pressure and then backed out of it. Knowles talked about that being just aiming to do that with disguise, to disguise your coverage and create confusion for the quarterback. He said that was, the defense really perfectly executed, and then kind of paused and smiled and said, not so badly designed, I guess. So that's an example of just something they're doing a little differently this year and showing maybe a little bit more of this year. Sonny Styles, he's someone who they have talked about a bunch over the course of the year. He has, again, he should be technically in his freshman fall of college. He enrolled a year early. So he's, it feels like he's been here forever. He should technically be in his freshman fall of college. And he's someone that we talked about so much over the course of the year because, again, people kept asking, so we keep talking. It feels like he is growing into the role that they sort of envisioned for him all along this year.
Absolutely. Is everything perfect? No, not yet, because he's a true sophomore. And as Tom said, chronological age, he's a true freshman. Mm-hmm. So there's still going to be some learning. There are going to be some situations. The other teams have dudes too that, maybe not everything's going to go right, but it's going right a lot more than it's going wrong with Sonny. We still see a lot of times where, they will kind of sub in obvious positions to bring Sonny off. I mean, the goal is going to be to get him to be able to be a 3-down player at some point, and I believe he's well on his way to that. I don't necessarily want him out there necessarily matching up against Purdue's Deion Burks. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's really going to be a great matchup. Mm-hmm. But I think that you're going to start seeing more and more 6 out there for 3 downs at various times. But Ohio State is blessed with having so much depth. And again, knock on wood, they've been so healthy largely that we've not seen the rotations, and people are so used to seeing these deeper rotations. Ohio State hasn't necessarily had to go there, and that's not a bad thing. Of course, we'll get to 24 and be like, why didn't any of these guys play? Well, you play for the moment.
Yeah, exactly. If you still have championship aspirations and legitimate championship stakes on the line, you're not going to get cute on if the game is kind of not entirely decided. You saw Miami get a little cute when the game was not entirely decided on Saturday night. Did not go great.
Don't go full Mario.
Never go full Mario. That was a Wario game management situation.
That was
sure.
Bowser.
Just kind of scrolling through the rest of my notes here. I think we've kind of covered pretty much all the stuff. Tyleik Williams, just the amount of snaps he's getting. He's just being healthy, able to utilize his athletic ability, understanding the offense, picking things up, seeing the play, and just the fact that he's understanding stuff better, and the years of film study is sort of accumulating at this point. The number of reps is accumulating, so he's seeing stuff before it happens.
A lot of positive things, too, about Kenyatta Jackson. He's kind of in the CJ situation, and positive things about Caden Curry. Quote-unquote, he plays with his hair on fire.
Yeah,
and as with somebody with very little hair, that's just terrifying because that's going to get right to my scalp.
And he is, I feel like it's kind of this underreported story that, he's also playing on the other side of the ball too as a fullback in short yardage situations. That's that is an anything to help the team win kind of situation. And you've seen guys, Steel Chambers, Chip Trainum, you've seen them flip flop one side of the ball to the other. It has been a while since I think Rashad Berry, was the last guy to do both sides of the ball in one game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and I mean, short of maybe like a one-off, I think that's somebody that you would at least expect to see that from. Barry is the last one I can think of as well.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we will wrap this up for now. We'll be back later. We'll be back later tonight. Tony and I will be doing our Ohio State and Maryland rewatch episode on the Buckeye Weekly podcast. We'll have that coming up a little later on today, and then tomorrow night we'll be back here inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center talking about all the stuff we learned from the Ohio State players. We're going to be doing interviews.
It sounds like we're going to actually be getting more assistants this week. I'm going to be very interested. Hopefully we get to talk to Justin Fry about the offensive line. Hopefully we get an opportunity to talk to, who else I'd like to talk to Larry Johnson. I mean, Jerry Emig, if you're watching, I'm putting in my requests right now of who I'd really like to talk to.
Yeah, Jerry did mention that was a possibility. We'll see until we get the official list and you actually see the people sitting at the tables. You never know, but yeah, that is the tentative plan for tomorrow night. So we'll be back here Wednesday night to talk about that.
And you and Tony will talk about it right after on the same stream. So you don't even have to go and find us.
Yes. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Hit that bell so you get notified when we do these live shows. So you don't miss anything. And of course, you can also, as Kevin mentioned, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fun, a lot of fun stuff coming up in the next few weeks as Ohio State gets ready to head to Purdue and then Penn State on deck. It is starting to get real. And then,
it's real.
And then the week after that, trip up to Madison. So it's going to be a very, very interesting rest of this month over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.